its significance for the world. It's not just the largest film industry in Africa, the second largest film industry in the world at the level of production. It's a film industry that teaches us a lot about the future of film in the 21st century. And I pointed out we need to make a distinction between film as an art object and film as a commercial product. Sometimes the two come together, the art object and the commercial product. But sometimes they go in separate ways. France is really the country above all countries of the film as an art work, while the United States has always been the country of the film as a commercial product, something to sell. And something I didn't say when I was speaking about the distinction between the two. The art object acquires its value in part due to its scarcity. It is materially and aesthetically inaccessible to some extent. It is not something you can find easily. And above all, the art object is not something that you can reproduce easily. It is original. And it has all kinds of originality. When I speak about the future Nollywood, and especially what I'm going to call the classical old-style Nollywood, rather than new Nollywood, which we've seen here thus far in this film festival, telling us about the future of film in the 21st century. Increasingly, and we're already seeing this in the United States, films are actually watched at home. They're actually watched at home. They're watched on your flat screen with surround sound. They're watched on your iPad or tablet. They're watched on your smartphone. They're watched on your laptop. We're finding that the gap of time between the release of the film in the cinema theater, the theatrical exhibition, and the movement towards streaming, video on demand, and all of these other platforms, we're finding that the time gap between them is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And the films which stay a long time in the cinema theater in the United States now tend to be action films with special effects, where the visual really counts. But films which depend much more so on the storyline, they get a lot of publicity from premiering in the cinema theater, and a couple of weeks afterwards, they're already available, streaming on, video on demand, and all of these other. In fact, we are now seeing films that are being released on a multi-platform. They come out in the cinema theater, and on the same day, 2 days later, they're available for streaming. Now, the films which have a lot of visual effects make most of their money in the cinema theater. But the films which don't have a lot of special effects, which are not so visually bound, where it's a story that counts, those films are making more money in the supplementary release platforms rather than in the cinema theater. The cinema theater serves to build up a buzz around the film. It serves to build up around a buzz around the film. You get to know about the film. You see the stars and all of that. But more people watch the film on these other supplementary platforms. And the old-style Nollywood already begins to get us to think about these other ways of disseminating film in the 21st century, given the technologies that we have at the moment. Now, in Africa, because of bandwidth problems, the majority of people aren't going to be watching film, on the internet. They're not going to be doing that. It seems to me that it's probably more satellite and cable television that will be the pathway. However, we know that at the moment, we know that the cable television stations, in particular, we've spoken a lot about Mnet yesterday, are not making a distinction between a high-quality film and a low-quality film. They're paying the same thing for every kind of film, which is not to the advantage of the film producers. And clearly, the film producers are rejecting that and looking for other ways of putting their films out there. And nonetheless, I would say that we shouldn't throw away the baby with the bathwater. We should criticize the cable television stations, satellite television stations, for not giving adequate value and recognition to the films, to the high-quality films which are being produced. It's probably not a good idea to reject that means of dissemination altogether. The film shouldn't kind of like only appear there without appearing in the cinema theater. But given where the technology is at the moment, and given the infrastructure that we have at the moment, I'm not sure that we will see a dissemination based mainly on the cinema theater, not just in Africa, but increasingly also in wealthy countries. I think the cinema theater is going to be the first stop, but no longer the final and ultimate stop for the film. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Quand je venais d'arriver aux États-Unis, mes étudiants ne parlaient pas du téléchargement. Mais maintenant, quand je parle dans mes cours à mes étudiants, ils me disent « Ah oui, est-ce que c'est disponible sur Netflix ?» C'est ce qu'ils me disent. Est-ce que c'est disponible sur Netflix? Si c'est disponible sur Netflix, on va regarder. Si c'est pas disponible sur Netflix, bon, écoutez, un de ces jours, on verra. C'est ce qu'ils sont en train de dire. Donc, il y a les habitudes culturelles et l'expérience de la France ne sera pas le même que l'expérience d'autres pays. Mais je crois que même en France, les jeunes vont s'orienter de plus en plus vers ces nouvelles technologies.
C'est un complément, je crois.
Oui, en complément. La salle de cinéma ne va pas disparaître. Hein.
Par exemple, dans les grandes écoles, maintenant, les gens vont au cinéma, dans les cours de langue, par exemple. C'est aussi important.
Well, let me summarize very quickly what she asked. She asked about the experience of going to the cinema. You know, it's kind of like a communal experience. People go together and they get something out of that experience. And I've said, you know, I agree with it that that's what cinema is. And indeed, I think to the extent that cinema will remain vibrant, it's because increasingly the owners of cinema theaters will have to make it an experience. It's not just you go and watch a film. It will have to be an experience that brings people together in all kinds of ways. Nonetheless, I said, I think even in France, the younger generation will gravitate towards the new technologies. It's not that people give up going to the cinema, and I don't believe that the cinema is going to disappear. I think the cinema is going to remain very, very important, but that the cinema, as I said, will be the first stop, and then there will be these other stops wherever the technology is available.
Is it better in English or français?
Comme vous voulez.
Okay. For the Algerian friends. Okay. Just two interesting numbers. In the mid of the 80s, the number of admissions in France, cinema admission was about 140 million. Last year it was 200 million. Okay. Just to tell you that first, it's not the end of cinemas, and on top of that, it's growing massively. It is exactly the same all around the world. Do you know that last year in China, every day, 9 screens were built in China? Now, China, they are coming from a point of around 500 screens around 10 years ago, and they will have, and now they have around 10,000, and they will double on the coming years. Same in Russia. Brazil, 70% of the cities that have more than 100,000 inhabitants have 0 cinema, and it's growing massively. So yes, you're right. Internet and everything is a complement, not complement, complement, but the cinema experience is still the first thing.
Mais ça peut se renverser. C'est-à-dire que
c'est pas ce que disent les chiffres aujourd'hui.